For years, and I mean nearly a decade, the Warriors were the golden standard in all of the NBA. From 2015 to 2022, the Golden State Warriors were the team that a lot of teams in the NBA looked up to, whether it be for competition, or trying to see how they should build their team. The Golden State Warriors were the standard. You got from 2015 to 2019 where they won a bunch of championships and were dominating the whole NBA. It was certain teams that didn't even feel like competing because they honestly didn't feel like they could put a team together that would be good enough to beat the Golden State Warriors. And then they have a few down periods, 2020, 2021. And then 2022 comes around and Golden State does it again. They win another NBA championship just when people thought they were starting to fall off. They come back and do it again. But since then, it hasn't really been the same. Of course, these Warriors today were not going to be the same Warriors of nearly a decade ago. But their fall off has been really tragic to see. And of course, we knew it wasn't going to last forever. We knew the championship window was going to close eventually. I mean, look at the Bulls. They had 2 straight three-peats, and look at them now. Nowhere near that level. So of course, nobody expected their championship window to last so long. But to see it close was pretty devastating, especially considering the way it went down. And when you go into this season and even last season, it's been kind of devastating to see the Warriors play basketball. Not that they have been, no, actually they have been pretty bad. But the Warriors haven't been atrocious. They just have been under the standard. And not even just under the standard of what they're used to, just under the standard of a NBA basketball team. And this has left the Warriors scrambling, trying to figure out what they can do. They already traded away Jordan Poole after an incident a couple years ago. They let Klay Thompson walk in the offseason because they decided to pay Draymond instead of him. So everything has been everywhere for the Warriors, especially with Bob Myers leaving. Warriors kind of find themselves in a very interesting period in their team history. But recently, the Warriors made a pretty significant trade to kind of turn it around. They made a trade for Jimmy Butler, which was one of the most talked about trades this deadline. And Jimmy Butler is one of, if not before Luka was traded, the most talked about trade piece in all of the NBA. It was inevitable that Jimmy was going to go somewhere. It was just more so of a matter of where he was going to go. And Golden State was a bit surprising, but not too surprising. I mean, when Jimmy Butler had first announced the list of teams that he wanted to go to, Golden State was on that list. Kind of surprisingly, but not really when considering how great Golden State is and what they needed. They still had Steph, they still had Dre, but outside of those two, they had some other key pieces, but they just needed an extra piece to kind of help them get back to where they wanted. At least one more time before Steph Curry and Draymond Green walk off into the sunset and retire from the NBA. So acquiring Jimmy Butler really made perfect sense when you think about it. And at first, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty pessimistic about the move. I criticized it. And it wasn't because I think Jimmy's a bad player. It wasn't because I think Draymond's a bad player. It wasn't because I think Steph is out of his prime. Now, Steph is nowhere near where he was a decade ago. Draymond is one of the most overpaid players in the NBA. But they are still pretty good players and quality players in the NBA who have a pivotal role on that Golden State Warriors team. And a player like Jimmy Butler is kind of exactly what they needed. And I think that's what we're starting to see as we get deeper into the season post-trade deadline. Now, I think I need to put into context how bad the Warriors were struggling pre-Jimmy Butler. Pre-Jimmy Butler, the Warriors were allergic to a winning streak. They hadn't won more than 2 games in a row since November. And they hadn't been in the playoff picture since December. As of right now, if I'm not mistaken, they are the 10th or 9th seed in the West, which is not what the Warriors are used to. But it made sense when you look at the roster. Stephen Curry really couldn't hold as much weight as he was in the past. This, of course, being due to his age. So Curry's older, he can't really do as much as he was able to do in the past. But he's still Steph Curry, he's still one of the best players in the entire NBA. Same thing for Draymond. Draymond is still one of the best defenders in the league and is a wonderful leader for this Golden State Warriors team. But not the Draymond Green that we saw in 2016, 2017, so forth and so on. So with these two players not being their usual selves or what they were in the past, and with them also struggling with injuries, the Warriors really didn't look that promising. They didn't have anybody to look forward to. I mean, of course, a couple years ago, Jordan Poole was the player that everybody had looked at, being next to the Warriors, being the successor to Stephen Curry. But then the whole incident happens and they don't have Jordan Poole anymore. And outside of him, you haven't had really anybody step up. Not Kuminga, not Moody, not Pods, nobody. So the Warriors have struggled, and before the Jimmy Butler deal went through, it was very evident that the Warriors lacked. And honestly, it looked like that they weren't going to be a playoff team and that they were not going to be able to give Steph the ability to have one last playoff push before he walks into the sunset and retires. And pre-Golden State, Jimmy Butler was in a pretty eventful and one could argue toxic situation in Miami. When he didn't get his contract extension in the summer that he wanted, he kind of threw a fit. He thugged it out for the first couple of months of the season, but by the time December had came, it was a bunch of problems. He had reached his limit and he requested a trade after making a scene on court and being suspended multiple times. And the Miami Heat, I believe they got to a point where they were just trying to get Jimmy Butler off him, and that's how he ends up on the Golden State Warriors. And surprisingly, the Warriors have looked pretty good ever since he has arrived. Even though it's a ridiculously small sample size, the Warriors have performed pretty well in the first 6 games with Jimmy Butler, as they have gone 5-1. But one thing that makes them look as good as they are and gives the Warriors a little hope for the future is how this is happening. Jimmy Butler is taking a lot of offensive stress off of Stephen Curry, who this season has dealt with a lot of attention from other defenses because honestly, outside of him, the Warriors don't have as big of a threat to pull defenses away from somebody like a Stephen Curry. They don't have a Klay Thompson. They don't have a Jordan Poole. They don't have a Andre Iguodala, Sean Livingston. They don't have these players anymore. So player like Jimmy Butler to be able to come to the Warriors and do this was perfect. And Jimmy Butler has been really dynamic for the Warriors. Not only does he get to the free throw line, he slows the game down for the Warriors. And he's amazing defensively as well. One of the biggest things that Jimmy has helped the Warriors with is non-Steph Curry minutes. Previously, when Steph Curry wasn't on the floor for the Warriors got outscored bad, and it just really wasn't good. It was like free money for the other team. Steph Curry isn't on the floor. Let's play whoever basketball and whoever is out there. But now that Jimmy is on, the Warriors are outscoring opponents by 49 points per 100 possessions. Now, it's not very realistic, but this is a small sample size. But the fact that they're winning these minutes is very good for the team, and it's a very good sign of what can come in the future. Jimmy Butler on offense has shown himself to be pretty effective at rolling on screens, cutting to the basket, and being able to do something with the ball in his hands, allowing for somebody like Steph Curry to be able to chill certain possessions and be able to get some off-ball movement, some of the things that we saw in the earlier days of the Warriors dynasty. Now, even with these amazing performances, there are still some questions around the Warriors and how good they could be. Now, the Warriors are 5-1, true. But these 6 games that they have played haven't really been against very strong competition. It's been against teams like the Bulls, Sacramento Kings, the Giannis-less Bucks, just teams that really aren't that big of a challenge to the Warriors at this current moment. And when it comes playoff time, they're not going to have to worry about these teams. So beating some of the more low-level, non-threatening teams really, although it's a good sign, because you're beating the teams you're supposed to. And at the end of the day, if you were losing to these teams, it would be a big deal. So the fact that you're beating them in the manner that you're supposed to is impressive. However, we can't give you full credit as if you're beating a team like the Thunder or the Lakers or the Rockets. You're not beating these caliber of teams, and these are the caliber of teams that you're going to have to beat when you face them in the playoffs, or if you're so fortunate in the NBA Finals. But like I said, 5-1 is not a bad thing. You're doing what you're supposed to. And it seems like the way Steve Kerr has implemented Jimmy Butler into his offense, really just implemented it into the team offensively and defensively, has been really well. It seems like Jimmy Butler is getting accustomed really well. He hasn't really had anything come out. It seems like him and Draymond are getting along really well starting off. So who knows what can happen in the future. One thing is for certain though, Jimmy Butler has reignited a flame in the Warriors that hasn't really been seen there since their championship run in 2022. Ever since then, the Warriors had really looked like a shell of themselves. Steph Curry looked like a shell of himself. Same thing with Draymond Green, and really every other player that has come in and out of the roster, in and out of the door in Golden State. But with Jimmy Butler being there, we're kind of seeing a bit of a resurgence. Steph Curry looks happier. He looks like he's having more fun playing the game. And he's been able to play more freely, which is what Steph Curry became loved and known for in the NBA. His free roaming spirit, his abilities to do things that we had never seen before, and just looking like he was having fun on the basketball court. Definitely seems like he has gotten back to that. And as for Draymond, Draymond is Draymond, but he still is looking better than he did previously. And Jimmy Butler is only igniting these surges. Not in just these two players, but everybody else on the roster. Moses Moody had a good game recently. Jonathan Minga has been decent. Podge is looking way better than he did at the start of the season. That had Warriors fans complaining and calling him the worst player in the NBA. So it's only right to be optimistic about what the Warriors can look like in the future. I know me personally, I'm optimistic for what the Warriors can look like because they're performing better than I expected. Although it's against low-level talent, not the teams that are really going to be threatening to them come playoff time when they are having to face teams like the Nuggets, the Thunder, and so forth and so on. They still look pretty good against these teams that they're supposed to beat. But I don't think they're going to make it very far regardless. But these are just my thoughts, of course. For any Warriors fans, for any Jim Butler fans, let me know how you feel in the comments about what the Warriors look like now with Jimmy Butler. And how far do you think they can go? Do you think the Warriors are now real legit contenders and threats in the Western Conference? Or are you more like me and you're like, I have to see a little bit more. I'm still a little bit skeptical. Make sure you leave that in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you give me a like. And if you like the video and you like hearing my voice, make sure you subscribe to the channel too. Making videos like this all of the time. But that's all I have for now. Till next time, peace.